Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now, what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, a few weeks back I did a video with 3 10-minute watercolour exercises, and that proved to be quite popular, and I've had quite a lot of you say, please can we have some more? So today we're going to be concentrating on landscapes. So I've got 3 20-minute exercises for you, not including drying time because some of these take a little longer to dry. So we're going to have a go at this lovely cloudy sky. Then, of course, with landscapes you need some trees. And to finish off with one of my favourite subjects of all, a lovely water reflection. Sometimes I think it's important that you don't try and put pressure on yourself by painting something that you want to frame and hang in the National Gallery. Sometimes spend half an hour or so just practicing some techniques. So come and join me and we'll paint these 3 step by step together. Okay, for today's materials, my paper on all 3 exercises is the Hahnemuhle cold press. It's a 300-pound, super thick. It's also on a block, so definitely won't need stretching, but any decent watercolour paper will do. And my colours today, I'll list them below each exercise. And as for my brushes, 4 from my range, 3/4 inch flat, number 12 and number 6 round, and of course my trusty number 3 rigger. So if you're into landscapes, then skies are always going to play an important role. So this is one method of creating a lovely cloudy summer sky. So wet the paper first all over with clean water. Start with a very watery wash of this warm value, and I'm using my flat brush quickly and evenly. Now this purpley colour is a 50-50 mix of Alizarin crimson and cobalt blue with just a touch of yellow ochre to neutralise the colour slightly. And these are going to be the shadows under each cloud. A little stronger mix going in here. And here I'm just feathering the edges with a clean, damp brush. Right, you have to work quite quickly because the paper still needs to be wet. And I'm painting around the first washes to create these simple cloud shapes. Remember to leave plenty of white paper. Now this is definitely one of the advantages of using a cotton-based paper over a pulp-based paper, is that it does stay wet just that little bit longer. Now with most skies you get a darker blue at the top, so I'm reducing the pigment as I come down to the horizon. Everything is still very wet, so I'm getting these nice feathery edges. Here with the same cloud colour, I'm just strengthening the underside. Next, using a screwed up tissue to lift out a few edges. Now do this quite sparingly because you don't want to lose too many of those lovely soft edges. Now, as the blue colour begins to dry and stain the paper, the lifting out is much more subtle, so you get these much lighter feathery clouds. Now you can almost use your tissue as a brush, lightly lifting off the colour. And this is exactly what I wanted, a combination of both soft and hard edges, which is exactly what you'd see in a natural cloud. Next, of course, we need to look at some trees, and this is a photo of an old tree just up our lane here. Now, taken roughly from the same spot, you can see that the one on the right has a much darker sky with the sun lighting the front face of the tree, and the one on the left has a more even light, but the branches are showing a dark value against a lighter sky. So if we convert this to black and white, we can see our tonal values much clearer. Now, most smartphones have this option. So the right hand image will be quite a challenge in watercolour, as we would need to mask out a lot of the branches when we paint in the darker clouds behind. So the left hand option will be much easier, as we can simply paint in the darker value of the tree directly on top of the lighter sky. So, a pencil sketch first, and I'm going to let the pencil work play a prominent role in this painting, getting in a nice strong line. So as normal, wetting the whole sky with clean water and dropping in all the sky colours, wet in wet. Now, I'm not going to mention every colour I use, but I will list them below. But this is a great opportunity to experiment and use some of your own mixes. Just let those colours mix and blend on the paper, and simply throw the paint at the paper and see what happens. You never know unless you try. Scraping here with the wooden end of my brush. And I'm still using my big flat brush, helping me to get lots of wet paint onto the previous washes. Now, the important thing to remember is to get out of the mindset of trying to copy that reference photo exactly. If we were, we could simply take a photocopy. So just use it only as a guide. Bit of splattering into the wet wash. Now for this main trunk, which is mainly covered in ivy, which is probably strangling the poor tree. And again, end of brush to pull out a few details. Really dark value here on this hedge. Now with my number 6 brush, these main trunks, always trying to paint with as few brush strokes as possible. Now with my trusty number 3 rigger, which most of you will know is my favourite brush and perfect for these lovely spindly branches and grasses. A little splattering here for some ivy effect. Then finally a creamy coloured pastel pencil for a few highlights and lighter coloured branches. little touch of splattering in the foreground bank. Now I really ought to cover up my sky area. Oops, an escape blob. Soon fix that. There we go. All done in just over 20 minutes. So for this final exercise, and probably my favourite technique of all, water reflections. Nice and simple, just 3 colours: yellow ochre, cobalt blue and Payne's grey. So very little drawing needed, and I'm wetting the top section only. And don't forget your rule of thirds by not painting your horizon line dead in the middle. So flat brush here and a very watery yellow ochre. And this is an equal mix of cobalt blue and Payne's grey. And I'm keeping a nice light area just in the centre here. So it's important you let this layer totally dry. Next, with these distant hills, I'm using my number 12 round, and I want to get a much stronger value on the right and along the bottom edge. Here is a little bit of magic. I'm painting in some clean water directly below the lightest part of the sky on the top edge of the hill, and we'll see what happens to that later as it begins to dry. Next, we're going to use the dry brush technique, which is perfect for painting trees. Now keep your brush as flat to the paper as possible to create this lovely broken texture. And this is always going to work better on cold press and rough paper. Now for me, this type of more spontaneous way of painting always looks more natural than something that you may have laboured over for hours. And again, painting a much darker value along the bottom edge. Here I'm using my number 3 rigger for a few little trunk details. Now I've let this wash get to the damp stage and dropped in a few blobs of clean water to force some back runs. Now when that's dried, you can see the amazing effect, both there as a bush and there with the sunburst. Now you really are in the hands of the watercolour gods, but sometimes you can just be lucky. So now I know what I have to reflect above, I can now paint in the water, starting by wetting the whole bottom section. The lightest colour first and a little yellow ochre, then a subtle wash of the grey mix. Here you can see I'm strengthening the value to match the hill above, making sure I leave that area of light in the water above. Next, a nice strong mix of the grey, trying roughly to match the shape of the trees above. Here, just tipping my board to almost vertical to let the wash slowly creep down the paper, but adding in more colour where I think it's needed. While still wet, just adding in a few quick ripples. Now let's get it even darker right under here. Okay, so now for a few ripples with my number 6 brush, and a round brush like this with its pointed tip is just perfect for those thin ripples, and it's always worth practicing this first. Some of the paper here is still damp, so I'm getting a nice feathery edge. So here, while the wash is still slightly damp, I'm dropping in some clean water and tilting my board. And again, you can see the lovely effect that you couldn't possibly try and paint. Finally, my magic scalpel to scratch away some glistening light. Now, it is really only a craft knife bought from my local DIY. Although I did have a student confess to me once to going into our local art shop and asking for a magic scalpel, only to be met with a very confused look. Anyway, there we go, all done. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did and you give all 3 of them a go. Remember, just treat these as simple practice exercises. You don't have to paint a masterpiece every time, and perhaps do 2 or 3 of each one. But the most important thing is you relax and you enjoy the experience. So please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already, it is free, leave a comment, I do read every single one, and of course I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Take care now everyone, bye for now.